Hello YouTube, this is Mars. Welcome back to another Conan Exiles base building guide. So today I'm going back over the cylinder design that I made a video on quite some time ago, but this time I'm showing you how to work out the interior. Because a viewer recently asked me, hey, how do you fit everything inside this kind of base? Well, I'll show you. Now for this, it takes a little bit of finesse, and you kind of have to have certain crafting stations. When I say certain, I mean the improved, and this is without planters. If you want to have planters and have another floor, then you'll have to make another floor and add a hatch on one of the squares up here. So let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes. Now, if you remember if you ever saw the first video, this base is designed primarily for solo to duo, and maybe three people depending on what you have in here. I've tried fitting 4 people in here before. It doesn't work out. I don't recommend it. So let's get started. So usually I start on the top floor first, and I start on this wedge foundation above the door. So first things first, the campfire. After that, the chests for weapons and gear. Usually I would have these on top of the armor stations, but this right here is fine. This will do fine. You only need to move these if you want to add another fridge or add another cauldron. It's up to you depending on the type of content you desire to do. Next is the armorer's stations. After that is the tannery with the chest on top of the tannery. We got a little jug here. I like these little nooks and crannies because I can just shove a few decorative items in here. This is kind of like the sweatshop design, but yeah, it's kind of like a sweatshop design. Everything kind of revolves one direction and does a whole 360. Next is the dismantling bench. And next is the firebowl cauldron. Like circular objects like this, I like to shove on the wedges just because they fit in quite nicely. You can move this over so you can get a little bit more space too. You might actually be able to fit another fridge right there. And on top of that is the chest, and the fluid presses are right next to it. Then the improved preservation box, the stove, and lastly the grinder with a nice little sign at the top. Happiness is homemade. Now we go back down to the bottom floor. I usually start right here on the left side of the door and then make a 360. Then I make a 360 around. So it's the before you forget chest. This is the outgoing box. This is where you put all your resources in that you usually forget before you leave the base. This is the trash bin. This is for like decaying meat. If you do any planting, you keep that somewhere. You decay all your meat in this. If you have any items that you don't know what to do with, you put those items in here, and so on and so forth. Next is the fermentation barrel, but this is optional. You do not have to have a fermentation barrel right here. You can squeeze in another kiln in here actually if you kind of do it right. You can possibly squeeze in another kiln. But if you're using the tier 1 or tier 2 versions of the kiln, you're kind of stuck with just those two until you get the improved furnace, which is the kiln. After the kilns, you get the carpentry bench, the improved carpenter's bench. You can possibly get the regular carpenter's bench in here, but you will not be able to utilize as much space just because the hitbox for that is much wider than this one. You cannot put the dryer in between the regular carpenter's bench like this, like so. You can only do this with the improved carpenter's bench. I have a chest on top of that, and here's my little section for just decoration. I like to have a little chair and some rugs and a bed and a little basket for clothing or whatever. You can try and hide some stuff back there. It's doable. I mean, this stuff isn't like if anyone puts a bomb back here in PvP, all this is going. So always remember, never put like anything on top of a rug because the rug will most likely break first, and whatever's on top of the rug will also be gone. So keep that in mind. Like that's a good way to get your stuff blown up really easily. Or somebody could, if you like had a blacksmith station like so, on top of a rug, the rug would break the blacksmith station. So yeah, my little decorative area tool and unrefined resources chest over here towards the back. You can kind of stack it towards the ceiling. It should be able to stack towards the ceiling. We have the Heroes Never Die, which is like the weapons and tools repair chest, and you have the base building materials chest. And the blacksmith station is last, of course. So yeah, that's the whole base summed up. Now I have another design that I've been toying around with for making this a bit more fortified. It's just like a work in progress. I'm still playing around with it. I'll show you that now. So this is the armored version to the solo base design. Now, this is more of a field operating base. This is for like when you don't have a section to build in. This is more like a prototype as well, since I have an improved version of this for a larger cylinder design. Now, since it's a prototype, it has some vulnerabilities that I've kind of worked out. But I do like this design just because of the way it is made. I do like the ridges on top, little ridges on the sides. Now, this base will still take a wallop, and it's more about how you position it. So if you breach the doors, going into the crafting hall, it's going to be about 15 bombs to get inside, depending on how a raider would blow in. Usually I would just put down 3 bombs per door and then get a move on, but you still have to climb up to the doors, and I have breakaway stairs. The second you try and place bombs on the stairs or below it, it's just going to break it. So at that point, you're really defending the crenellation on the bottom floor and the top floor. Now, since the base has vulnerabilities, I'd kind of want to talk about it. I just don't want to leave it out in the wind and let that be deciphered. Really, a huge part of it will be going after the crenellation if you wanted to get to the roof, which would be, in my honest opinion, the easiest, depending on how you protect the roof. If there's 4 people on and you're getting raided by 6 people, 2 guys on the ground floor fighting, 1 guy on the ground floor defending and repairing the base, 1 on top taking on any ranged attackers, or taking any ground attackers on from the top and using water orbs to put out any fires, and repairing from the rooftops and the interior of the base. So yeah, this base can hold from 3 to 4 people, which is pretty good. Since the position itself is so small, you could actually put palisades to help defend the back and the front of the base itself. You can even put palisades in front of the crenellation to protect the crenellation on the front end under the stairs, and you can even repeatedly place it there. As well as it'd be also wise to just take this entire section. Now you don't have to worry about the back too much, since I think there's some slopes you can actually just walk on to just get to the back. But at least that way you'd be able to like prevent people from coming in from. You'd be able to funnel enemies in from one direction. So that way you'd know where they'd be coming from unless they attempted to breach a wall, depending on how you made that wall. And plus, depending on the slopes here. If you place any bombs on the slopes, those bombs will roll off if they're not shot with an arrow. So that's just another thing to take into account for base protection. So I'm gonna go ahead and show the interior. It's about 5 doors on the inside. Now I kind of did something different with the interior here. I probably will be taking out these doorways. This is just an exterior little storage area. I'd probably seal those up since I'd want as much protection as possible. I'd probably seal these up with either pillars, or I'd take out the ceilings here and just put foundations. Either or. Same thing goes for these sections, but these aren't bad since they're on the 2nd floor and they'd have to breach the 2nd floor to get to this. Next is the door hatch to the 3rd floor. This is mainly the living quarters. I can get up here. The hatch door's not agreeing with me. Okay, there we go. So this is the hatch door. Now, living quarters, you can place beds all around here and then have some little ambiance here depending on whatever you want to put in. I really don't need that much. And you can have chests in the corners just for whatever stuff. So this is kind of doubles as the living quarters and the loot room. It's kind of cramped, but like really only 3 to 4 people can live in this kind of base at one time. Now, this is the little outside section. Here you definitely want to have 1 to 2 thralls out here just to help defend this position. Really at this point you're just defending the crenellation, but you're really relying on how high the base is too. And you got this section. There is a hatch door here, which I was struggling to try and put it right here so it'd be out of the way, but for some reason it just didn't want to place. I was trying to push the wheel of pain closer to the side, but it still wasn't agreeing with me. But I can figure out how to improve this in the future. I'm not too worried about it right now. Now, you can actually use this for thralling as well, since this will be home base, it'll be close by. It's not, the tier 2 wheel of pain actually isn't that loud, which is kind of surprising. You can just put a elevator up here, just place it down there, you can just get up from there to get to there. Now the base definitely has some vulnerabilities. Like I said, this is the prototype. If you really want to blow in, I'd say blow in from like the actual square foundations instead of the wedge. If you blow in from a wedge foundation, it'll be a lot easier to get in. Well, it'll be a lot harder to get in since like it's layered It's layered by each section of walls, whereas the square foundation, it's only one layer of this and a pillar in the middle. Now you can change that by just bringing this out with I think it's another square and then adding another wedge, so that would help with the tankability of those sections. Or you could just add palisades, but palisades will blow up after one bomb depending on the placement of the bomb. The good thing about this kind of position is it's sloped, so the best place to actually try and blow in would probably be the back, but it still could potentially roll down the hill and do minimal damage to the base itself. Not to mention, if all of you are on defending the base, it won't be easy to get inside. Now you can protect this whole section a lot easier just by preventing climbing from the area. But you'd pretty much have to take this entire section and have one specific entryway and exit way. Really, if you want to do this kind of design, it's location specific. I would never do this out in the open. Not this one, just because like it has too many vulnerabilities, but I do like the design. I believe that is about it. I want to say thanks again for watching. I will be doing more Conan content in the future. Keep slaying, guys. See you later.